Good day, Konstantin Yosifovich. Question. You were the first head of the international unit of the United Russia Party. What's your evaluation of your work, your result? Did you have any difficulties? Answer. I started my party career in the General Committee in the Presidium as an international secretary of the United Russia Party, when the party just started its development, and everything was new to me. I was walking on thin ice. At that time, the task of the international unit was to confirm the relevance of our party, its political platform, its activities at the global level, to find our partners, the partners who share our party principles and who are ready to collaborate, to implement our values, our beliefs at the international venues. I believe we reached this goal at that stage. It's clear that right from the start we faced some resistance, which was at that time rather preliminary, but I think our opponents at that time, at the beginning of the 2000s, had the vision that Russia should be ideologically restrained and squeezed from the West as they saw it. Back then, we had a lot of discussions and sessions, and we still couldn't find the common ground with the large inter-party structures from the West. Although I should confess we did our best to organize this dialogue. And the reason of this failure was that Russia, not the United Russia Party, but Russia as a state, was envied. And this envy has been transformed by now into Russophobia. We couldn't achieve the goal in the West, but we managed to be extensively successful in other areas. United Russia, among others, if you will, inspired and organized the International Conference of Asian Political Parties, and our party was given some seats in the executive committee of this conference, and we still preserve these seats, and we managed to establish contacts in other areas of our international policy, and I believe we should be satisfied with these results. Question. For more than 20 years you've been dealing with both international diplomacy issues and parliamentary ones. In what way are these sectors different? How did you manage to interchange them to reach the success? Answer. Professional diplomacy has its own frames. I do not in fact criticize, in no way does it limit the powers of the diplomacy, but there are these frames, and the diplomats typically could find it difficult or maybe impossible to go beyond these frames, and they observe their duties, and this is right. As for party diplomacy and parliamentary diplomacy, to some extent have more freedom, if you will, because we have no rigid frames. We do not voice the opinion of the state, we voice the opinion of our voters, political parties, in case of parliamentary and party diplomacies, and we can dare to look for some options, some common grounds, or vice versa. We can be even more straightforward and stop further discussion about various issues if this does not echo our national interests. I believe that when our dialogue partners hear our clearly articulated opinion from the politicians representing different nations, not departments, but nations, they are unlikely to start pressing us. In this sense, both parliamentary and party diplomacies are really useful tools for the diplomacy at state level, professional level, and to some extent can support it and enhance it. Question. You've mentioned that the opinion about Russia is changing, the environment is changing. What is, in fact, the future of the parliamentary diplomacy which actually expresses the will of the citizens? Answer. You are right, the opinion about Russia is changing, but I wouldn't see it as a global trend. If it is changing on the west side. About 30 years ago, when NATO confrontation, the Cold War, ceased to exist, a number of Western countries had an illusion that they won this Cold War, and they allegedly had every right to believe that the world was theirs. The global chessboard mentioned by Felix Dzerzhinsky at his time, as they saw it, appeared to be under their control. The chessboard didn't have any adversary pieces, and now when these 30 years brought substantial changes forward, new power centers started to appear, and the countries, including Russia, rightfully returned back to this global chessboard, then even our presence on this chessboard is perceived by this group of Western countries as a kind of a threat. That's not true. We're just like any other country, any other political unit, and this world belongs equally to all of us. It's great that other regions of the world understand that pretty well, and Russia develops very productive relationships with our partners within Shanghai Organization of Cooperation, currently presided by Russia, and you can see BRICS with our neighbors, Eurasian Economic Union, Collective Security Treaty Organization, and last but not the least, the Commonwealth of Independent States. We definitely should mention it as well. We speak common language with our partners within these organizations, and we agree that the world is really diverse, multipolar, and the global development should be determined by equality, respect to the sovereignty, and non-interference into the domestic activities of the sovereign states. And I believe this platform has all the rights to be extended, to be expanded all over the world and make the world more balanced, more stable, and more fair. Question. You've already referred to BRICS and SOC. Why is it so important to have these party units within these organizations? Answer. Inter-party dialogue is surely very important as a means for two-way communication and as a communicative tool on the international venues, because this is an opportunity to see if we are speaking the same language with other countries. In this case, we are dealing with the majority parties, or with the party of power, whatever you call it. So to check if we are on the same page and to exchange the ideas, proposals aimed to improve our own party platforms, so that to make these platforms compatible with the overall state interest, which in fact is undoubtedly so, surely it is so, including Russia and the United Russia Party, and also to take some international practices in party development, including the development of the international platforms of the particular parties, so that when you come back home, some new ideas, new approaches can be transformed into particular proposals in terms of professional diplomacy, management of the country, which defines the foreign policy of our state. So it's a kind of mutually beneficial and multidirectional and importantly very productive dialogue.